based on previous experiences, even if you tell people to wear a mask, even in the best possible scenario, 80% of them would wear a mask. So even by putting it as a blanket rule that anybody outside should wear a mask, doesn't mean that everybody is going to do it. And all those things are factored into these kind of advisories. So by putting that out, it is just a way to remind people that, well, the pandemic is still here, it's still on, and it will be on for the next few months. So just to put that thought in people's minds, because sometimes, calamities and disasters, they have short-term memories in people's minds. This past weekend, the trends have been a little bit worrying. Like we just went through the July 4th weekend, and this past weekend, we almost, in our own testing center, we had a lot more positives, which means that we are looking at anywhere from 25 to 30 new patients in the county, which were positive. And the age group varied. It varied from age 11 all the way into the 50s. And the average age was in the mid-30s. So having said that, people are now in the midst of summer, and people had that built-in pent-up energy which they wanted to release. And people have sometimes forgotten now that, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, and going green doesn't mean that, that the virus and the threat is over. But this is not a seasonal virus. Flu has a season. This is, as you can see right now, we're in the midst of summer in the 90-degree heat. Still we're having the virus propagating. So that's one. Number two is even though the case infectivity rate, the contagiosity, the transmissibility of this virus is way higher than the flu, which means it's easier to transfer from one person to other. And thirdly, this has got very, very odd presentations. It can cause blood clots, it can cause diarrhea, it can affect your GI, your respiratory system, it can affect anything. And still, it's a masquerader of other conditions. You might think, hey, this person is having a GI bleed, it got blood in his stools. We think, okay, because there might be an ulcer. That's not the case. COVID-19 can also cause it. So the myriad of symptoms are very large, severity is large, and the transmissibility is much, much easier. And lastly, we don't even know much about the way this virus transfers. We do know, droplets. We do know sometimes airborne in certain conditions. We do know that, it can be transferred from surfaces to other person who touches it. That does not mean that, we know everything about the virus. Complacency is very, very dangerous, especially in medical science, and especially when you're dealing with parasites or viruses in this situation, because it just requires one particular person, or one person has the propensity to transfer it to 5 other people. So you just require one bad weekend, one bad venue, when there are a lot of people conglomerating together, for example, say 250 people, and people are laughing out loudly. They are in a bar setup. People can get boisterous in those situations. And just imagine them transferring the virus among themselves, and that same person going back to work, going back to home, going back to his elderly parents, or even to his own kids. The cycle will continue to follow. So until a durable vaccine is available, unless and until the population does not develop immunity to it, it will be very, very difficult to ascertain whether you are completely out of the woods. I've heard many people saying that, well, let me get the virus, let me get over with this. The funny part about this is, number one, it can be extremely dangerous because young people do die. You just heard the Broadway actor at the age of 41 die after 3 months being on the ventilator, being in the hospital. And second of all, you don't know how long the immunity is going to last, because studies have shown to develop that kind of immunity, the person has to be super sick. He has to be in the hospital. He has to be really being on the life-saving medications. And only then you can develop a robust immunity to it. So if me or you probably got the virus, we were asymptomatic, and it went away, there's no guarantee that you're immune to it. You're going to get it again because you were not sick enough to develop that kind of antibody response, which will produce or which will give you that kind of immunity. Live your life, I agree, everybody has to. Summer lasts only for 12 weeks. But at the same time, just be cognizant and don't be selfish. Even if you are healthy, even if you're young, that doesn't mean that, well, it is only about you. You also need to look around at the vulnerable population and try to stem this virus, because a small sacrifice right now will go a long way in trying to mitigate this crisis. And I think all of us have a role to play.